The rich human interest story of Hollywood is filled with happiness and despair, joy and tragedy, a crazy quilt of madness, sanity, laughter and tears, the desperate struggle to reach the top and the battle to remain there.
My name is Vivian Kerr, and this is Conversations with Actors. So how did you get into acting? Were any of your parents or your family members actors?
My mother was Elizabeth Taylor. Did you know that?
Stop it.
Okay. No, nobody in my family was in acting, but I guess I always wanted to be in the living room and do a little performance for whoever would watch. I was very hungry for attention, I guess. And then there were kids in the apartment buildings where we'd live when I was a kid who were into the idea of doing a show. And then it really gelled for me in the 5th grade. I was 10 years old, and my best friend in school was a guy named Ted Nash. And Ted Nash's mom had the idea that we should do a play. So I believe she did her own adaptation of Homer and the Donut Shop. And I played Mr. Anderson, the advertising man. Ted played Homer, and we did it. We performed it in front of our elementary school mates.
Site specific.
But the thing is, I wasn't just a disinterested student. I was I was an alienated, dreamy, and completely detached student in elementary school. I didn't know why I was there, and I had no desire to please anybody. It was just, I will get here, and then when class starts, I'll put my head down on my desk, and I'll try and get through and then eventually they're going to go home.
When did you first encounter professional actors?
On Wednesday. No, but the thing is, that when I did this play, and this was the 5th grade, the teachers that I was afraid of, came up to me and went, "Hey, this is your thing."
Well, that's great that they were so encouraging.
Because we knew there was something, and you certainly hadn't demonstrated that anything else was your thing. I was a kid, when we would play baseball, I would be way, way out in the outfield, and if anything ever got out towards me, I was looking at grass, but it was the first thing where I felt I feel like this is my thing. And but it always sort of been my thing. It was weird to have outside of my living room people understand that. And then when I was in junior high school, somebody who lived in our apartment building came into my homeroom and said, "Hey, they need boys in the drama class." And I was like, "Yeah," I didn't even know they had such a thing. And so then I started doing, drama class in school in 7th grade, and loved it. And all through at 7th grade and junior high and high school, that was my whole, tribe.
I think a lot of younger actors there is like that common thread where they don't fit anywhere else, and they kind of find they realize like, oh, this is my people, like these are my brethren.
Yeah, and you laugh a lot. People do goofy stuff. You make great friendships.
There's more girls.
It was a really big part of it for me. Not that I didn't have male friends, 'cause I made some really lasting friendships that last till today from when I was in drama in high school. But it was high school theater was like where my libido came online.
Where did you train?
I trained at University High School. So after high school, I went to UC Irvine. I was there for a little while. Mm-hmm. I did not achieve the level of baccalaureate, but rather I left and went to study in a conservatory at South Coast Repertory, and they were very nice, and I was very broke, and they kind of cut the price for me, but the price that I did have to pay, I didn't have that either. So towards the end of this conservatory, which initially was a summer conservatory, they said, you have to give us something. And I didn't have any money, and suggested that maybe if they were to hire me to work in the theater in some capacity, then I would have an income from which I could begin to pay my debt to them. And it just so happened that it was the moment that organization was moving from their storefront on Newport Boulevard to their big, beautiful theater where they are now, in Costa Mesa. And they said, okay. And so, for months and months, I, swept up a construction site after the construction workers left, and then eventually was in the first show that was produced in that new theater.
That's so interesting that you left Irvine. Did you feel like you were not really learning there, or did you feel like you had more experience than your classmates?
Well, it had to do with the fact that, all right, so while I was at Irvine, I did a play, and Lee Schemmel, who's really a fantastic director, at the time ran the conservatory, and was also, I believe, the casting director for South Coast Rep. She saw the play that I did, which was in college, which was Pirandello's Enrico IV. And then after the performance, she talked to those of us who were in the show and said, if you're interested in professional training, come see me when you finish school. And
you're like, I'm interested now.
Yeah, I basically felt like she was talking only to me. And I went back to my dorm room and wrote a note to I didn't even have a phone in my room. I wrote a note to my parents saying, so I think what's going to happen is that I'm going to finish this year. I'm going to go to this conservatory at this theater, and then I'm going to start working for this theater. I'm going to get my equity card and become an actor. Like, I saw it. I saw the whole thing. And it's not like I felt like I wasn't getting paid any attention, but I definitely had the feeling towards the end of the year that friends who were seniors or friends who were graduate students and were leaving, and I was hearing their anxiety about what they were going to do next. And then when I went to do this training at South Coast Rep, which was, it was really great. I'm sure it is now too, but wonderful actors, great teachers, and just all a very intense all-day focus. And at the end of it, this sort of decision of, well, I could go back to school and pick up all the credits that I've missed because I spent all my time in the theater department, or I can start working at this theater, and the guy who teaches the lighting design class, I can take that, or I can work with him because he's actually lighting the show at South Coast. This was a guy named Tom Rosica. And I remember, like, at one point being at South Coast Rep with him, hanging the first lights that went in that theater, standing with him on a 18-foot scaffold, hanging lights on the iron pipe, and asking him if there's a way that I had an incomplete in something, and if there's a way you could just make it a pass. And our lives are in each other's hands, and he refused. He was like, "No, you have to finish. I can't just." Anyway, so
so funny.
But I spent 3 years there, and I did get my equity card there. I learned so much, because they made me do everything too. So in addition to playing, moving furniture and
spear carrier number 2, yeah.
Right. I mean, my
messenger.
The first play that I did there was Time of Your Life, and there's the villain in the piece is a policeman named Blick, and then at a certain point, 2 cops who are sort of kind of like Blick's henchmen come on. So so a cop enters, and he is followed by another cop. So I made my debut on the professional American stage.
You were even the first cop.
Another cop.
Another cop.
Yeah. So
plainclothes detective number 4.
Yeah, but and I would, and I was also the assistant stage manager. So the guy who's the lead, Joe, I think it's Joe, who sits at the table and eats juicy fruit gum throughout the whole play, and he keeps sending somebody out for, give me a pack of juicy fruit. So he eats probably 40 pieces of gum throughout the play, and the guy didn't want to go to sugar shock, so I had to take packs of sugarless gum and then empty packs of juicy fruit gum, and then switch them out for him, and then make them look like. So that was part of my pre-show. And then, once that kind of stuff was done and the stage was mopped and everything, then I'd put on my costume, do my makeup, and then I would walk around for about 20 minutes to get my cop's walk right. Because I didn't say anything. All the cop did was come to the bar and walk around and leave. Right? So I really wanted to communicate as much as I could with the walk. And don't really know how successful I was, but it was very engaged.
It's so great, though. I love this, it's like something so, young actor about that. Do you know what I mean? It's like the tiny thing, but you're 40 minutes, talking in the dialect for the 2 lines in the dialect. There's something.
I did vocal warm up. I stretch.
It's great. It's great. All right. Oh, it kills me. It's like I'm having flashbacks. When you started working more on camera, or I guess working on camera, was that like a learning curve for you, having trained in theater?
I'd done theater for a few years at South Coast Rep. I'd done a couple things here in LA that were part of the equity waiver arrangement. May it rest in peace. And I had spent a lot of time in San Juan Bautista working with El Teatro Campesino. And just incidentally, I worked at El Teatro and did the stuff in LA based on the fact that one of the teachers in the conservatory at South Coast Rep, in addition to being a wonderful teacher, was a director who hired me for a small play here and then for, a season of plays with El Teatro Campesino. That's Luis Valdez's company that did Zoot Suit. It was just revived at the Taper. So, all these little experiences that you have at the beginning, they have like tendrils that reach out throughout the rest of your life or career. And one day I was at the Mark Taper Forum Annex auditioning for a Lord Theater Company somewhere in the Midwest. And I ran into a real, like, adult actress who had been working for a long time and who was a professional, and who was in the play that in which I had gotten my equity card. And her name was Nomi Mitty. Nomi asked me something about my agents, and I remarked that I did not have an agent, and this was now 5 or 6 years after we had done this play together. She said, well, you can't, how are you ever going to do any TV work or anything? It never occurred to me that was something that was in the cards for me, I just never thought of working in television or films.
Which is so funny because it's like you were in Los Angeles or in the sort of greater Los Angeles area.
Yeah, but I had no. It seemed as possible as being an astronaut. It's like, I don't know. How do you? First of all, how do you get up there?
Yeah, it's like
you have no idea. I had no concept of it at all, and so she set me up with a meeting with an agent who was a decades-long friend of hers, or decades-long friendship. And so I went in, I met these agents, and they basically said, hey, nice to meet you. You haven't done squat, so if you ever do, get back in touch. And I left. But they were nice to me because they were, know me. So so later that day, I get a phone call from them. I guess it was probably a Friday, because that's when they do these things. But they said, so we just got a thing for an audition for a role on Different Strokes, and you're really very ripe for it. So why don't you go over right now and audition? And I did, and I so miraculously got it. And so my first TV thing was doing an episode of Different Strokes, which was really, really weird. And
were you nervous, like going to set for the first time, because you hadn't really had that experience?
No, but I'd done a lot of plays, and they kept saying, "Don't worry about it. It's just like doing a play. It's just like doing a little play. We're going to rehearse for 4 days, and on the 5th day, we're going to rehearse a little bit, but we're going to shoot some of it, and then we're going to shoot some of it in front of an audience." It was like that sounds great, and it was all super fun, fine. It was weird doing the show, and I was like a little ashamed of it. I had wanted, like,
because it wasn't Hamlet, or
right.
Yeah.
It was like, I can't believe that, like, my entry point is among my cohort is like a joke of a thing that represents, like, low quality, super lowbrow American pap.
And then you got the paycheck.
It wasn't even. Yes, that was great, except for the fact that the paycheck was actually I had to join the.
Oh, because you weren't in SAG at that point.
No, I had to join the guild, and
you probably ended up paying
the
money.
Agent, and then I paid off a fraction of what I owed other people over the years of not having two dimes to rub together. And my acting teacher, I had to call and say, "Look, I'm going to do this episode of this TV show, so I'm going to have this class on Wednesday night." And his response was, "Well, if you think that's the best thing for your acting." So we're shooting the show, and in terms of the difference between television, film, and theater, one of the first scenes that I do, I'm standing at my locker, because it's set in a high school or junior high, and I'm a guy who sells stolen stuff out of my locker. And my prop is I'm going to offer somebody a gold chain for sale. And we start doing the scene, and I open my locker, and I don't preset any of it. It's all done by the prop department. I open the locker, and the chain falls out, and I reach down, and I pick up the chain, and I continue with my dialogue, and then there's cut, stop, all right, we're going again. Joe, what are you doing? And I'm kind of looking around, I wonder, who screwed up? And then I've got an AD and a camera guy saying, can I ask you why you just ducked out of the shot? In front of a bunch of people, And I said, because the chain fell out and I picked it up. He goes, if it falls out again, just leave it and do the scene. We don't see the chain. And it was one of those things of I don't know how any of this works. I have no idea. I can't even understand why what I did was a problem. So that was the beginning of understanding there was that there was going to be a learning curve. But it's not that great. It's once you understand that it's just, if you work in a 99-seat theater, there's a way you have to hold yourself or speak that's somewhat different than if you're working outside at the John Ensign Ford and it's 1,500 seats, and you have to be heard over the freeway and, possibly...
Didn't they redo that theater recently? I haven't been up there.
I'm not sure.
Someone said they were remodeling or something. Oh, maybe just the inside.
So, and then if you're shooting film or television, you're just having to understand where the lens is, and because that's the eyes and ears, really, or not the lenses and the ears, but
Who do you think has taught you the most about acting?
Well, I had a bunch of great teachers. I never really did a program. I didn't go to the neighborhood playhouse, and I didn't do a course of Meisner study or anything like that. But I worked with James Wilson for a number of years. There were 5 or 6 of us who would meet weekly in his garage in West LA and do this workshop for 4 or 5 hours a night once a week. And it was scene study and exercises and monologues, and it was very intense, very underneath the microscope, and extremely helpful. I worked for some time. The great Jose Quintero was teaching, and it was a scene study class. We would almost exclusively work on O'Neill and Tennessee Williams, and there was, no one had a better understanding of that material than Jose, and he was an extraordinarily passionate teacher who just would continually urge one to continue digging into the emotional truth and the emotional bedrock under what was happening moment to moment. I was extremely fortunate to work with Roy London for many years. I think Roy. By that time, I'd kind of come into my own as an actor, and I was working. I was working regularly in film and theater, and really hadn't done much television yet. And Roy was the teacher who really helped me to start to understand that I could, instead of doing things the right way, that I could start to access what I had to bring to material. Which is not to say to like make every role seem, not to turn every part into me walking around my kitchen, but that the relationships and the concerns that a character may have could correlate absolutely to what my life experience was, and to use my life rather than shut it off.
I was going to say, so do you have like do you ascribe to a certain method or system of working, or do you change based on the material?
I try to swing at whatever the material is with what I understand the demands are. So, okay, I love to have a good idea of what's happening in a time period, and what people's concerns are, and where the fellow I'm playing, where he lands on a socioeconomic ladder or hierarchy, and what his power relationships are based on his class or ethnicity or religion or etc. And so I love to do research. I don't do like heavy accent work, but I do like to get a sense of what sound is. I do like all those externals, and invariably there's, since working with Roy and more, and by the way, my work with Roy ended at the time of his death, which is almost 25 years ago now. But he's still super present for me, and my work invariably now, at a certain point, I find I can be doing Chekhov and thinking, it's about how much work I put into how much time I put into this house. They want to take it over, and at a certain point in rehearsal, I go, no, it's completely about my relationship with my daughter. That's what this is. It's Vanya and Sonia. So, it's about my relationship with my brother. And that's where everything always opens up. But it's never like I have to like twist it to make it like fit like a relationship, or I have to, there's this very helpful notion of emotional substitution, which is like the driving equivalent of like, keep your eyes on the road, but then check the mirrors every now and then. It's one of those things that it just becomes germane to what you're doing. And I don't know if what I'm saying, I can't tell if what I'm saying is so elemental or if it...
No, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and it makes auditioning weird because it's impossible to go in. because I no longer have any sense of like, what would be the right way to do this? It's like, I'll do this as though I'm going to try and find like what in this relationship feels like, it feels like something I can relate to, and try and do that and see if by any chance that's like of the 152 color crayon box that they've got coming in, if they're going to pick my particular shade.
Do you feel like you've gotten better at auditioning over the years?
No, I feel like I've gotten worse.
How so?
I don't know. It's just I don't know what the. I mean, I feel like they've gotten worse. I feel like the hiring community has gotten worse at auditions. I never go in to audition for something with a director who's like, okay, but what, can you show me that, but with a bit more detachment or a bit more anger, or I feel like 99% of the time I'm going in and reading with a casting associate who is also using a phone at this point, or a little camera on a tripod, and reading with me, and there's no engagement with the human, or they're asking to self-tape, and I don't really know. I don't really know what anybody gleans from that about an actor that they wouldn't get from a piece of paper that's like, oh, he's 5'8", he's, X number of pounds, this is how bald he is. Is that right? Is this what we want? I don't know. But then I'm not in casting, so I don't know what their criteria is. But it's weird. For about 2 weeks, I went on commercial auditions when I first started out with that first agent who signed me because I did an episode of Different Strokes, and I never got hired for commercials, and that's what all these TV auditions feel like now. Same sort of personalized, yeah. So.
Well, yeah. I've known no different, sadly.
No, I think that's our unfortunate reality. And the fucking bummer is that in Los Angeles, I've lived in New York, and I think it's horseshit, the idea of like there's a New York actor, a Chicago actor, an LA actor, like there's a Miami actor. That's bullshit. But I haven't lived in New York since so much television production has moved to New York. But in Los Angeles, it feels so much more depersonalized, and so what actors who are in LA had were these 99-seat theaters. And I think it's outrageous what Actors Equity has done. And I think they've done it for the most misguided reasons.
Just in case people who are listening don't know what that is, do you want to give a Cliff's Note summary of how it's changed?
Yeah, so here in Los Angeles, since the 1970s, maybe even going back to the 60s, there was this kind of agreement because there's very little or relatively little compared to New York, theater work in Los Angeles. We have a few more large professional theaters that pay now than we did 10 years ago, but it's only a couple. And large-scale professional theater has gotten very expensive to produce. So the bigger theaters, not exclusively, but for the most part, do plays with small casts. So a big theater like the Geffen or the Taper, while they may do a Shakespeare or they may do some larger piece or musical that has a large cast, there are a lot of 2 and 3 and 4 character plays that they do. And there are thousands of Equity members in Los Angeles who are working actors. And because there's been this scarcity of paying roles, because there's this scarcity of these larger theaters, there had been this arrangement since, let's say, the late 60s or early 70s, that actors could essentially self-produce in theaters of under 100 seats. And it became as the 99-seat plan. For a while, it was known as Equity Waiver, which meant that if it was under 100 seats, Equity would waive its rules about salary, so that actors could not have to pay themselves and be able to work. And that had been codified a couple of times. In the 80s, there was an agreement with 99-seat producers who were largely actors. And in the past couple of years, Equity has taken a very activist stance, decided to revise the agreement, held a referendum in Los Angeles about changing the code, saying that actors who work in these small theaters should be paid a minimum of minimum wage, which sounds all right, unless you're producing a show yourself and you're trying to do Julius Caesar and realize that there's no way you can afford to produce it, let alone be in it, if everybody's got to be paid, an hourly wage. It somehow sounds like, well, surely these actors should be at least paid minimum wage. Is that too much to ask? But it's not some outside producer who's making profit from this. These things don't generally make any money. And anyway, so the Equity came up with a plan and put it before the membership in Los Angeles. The membership voted and rejected it by a vote of 2-1. And Equity said, well, it was just an advisory vote. We're promulgating this plan anyway. And it's already had a tremendous deleterious effect on the theater community in Los Angeles. And Equity is yet to give a coherent and, I think, honest answer about why they did this. But it's upsetting. So, and there are exceptions. There are companies that are membership companies are exempted from this minimum wage rule. But I don't see how on earth that's legal. If the argument is that people who are working in such a place are supposed to have to make, by state law, make minimum wage, then how Equity can exempt them? None of it holds up. And I joined Equity, in 1981, and I just I have no respect for anybody in the leadership there. So, unfortunately.
Do you think it's better in New York, or?
No, Equity did I don't think the showcase code is any better. I frankly, I don't see the point of doing a play, 2 or 3 performances a week for 4 weeks. That you don't. The great theater companies in this world rehearse for months and months, and they play things for years. And they develop this extraordinary artistry, and that is really sadly lacking. Anyway, not that there aren't great companies.
I sort of feel like that's why so many actors have this dream now to work on sort of the limited television series on cable, because it's like that's sort of the last place where you can play this role for like a big arc over months and months.
Yeah, right.
That is something that's I think a lot of actors are drawn to have that experience to develop something for months and months.
Television right now, there's there are a lot of great plays, and there's so many wonderful playwrights out there right now. New and emerging playwrights. People have emerged in the past few years.
Sounds like they're coming out of a cocoon.
That's right, candidates. But
I always like those awards where it's like actor wins like best newcomer. It's like they've been around for 15 years.
That's right. That's right. It's interesting that there are these great cable or Amazon shows that, Annie Baker has, this, writing credit on Horace and Pete, Louis C.K.'s show, and Sam Hunter's writer on Baskets. So clearly that medium is also drawing the best writers that we have, as well as actors.
What do you have sort of like a dream role that you would love to play that you haven't played yet, or like a kind of a project that you sort of fantasize about that you haven't gotten to do yet?
No, but that reminds me of a joke a friend told a director. A actor's been out of work for 18 months, calls a friend and says, "Hey, I just got a job." "Congratulations! What's the deal?" And he goes, "Well, you got to hear this." So it's me, it's Scarlett Johansson and Matt Damon. It's like, well, and who else? No, it's the three of us, and I've got third billing, but it's above the title with them. It's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Where do you shoot? And it's like, we start out, it's 6 weeks in Hawaii, then 8 weeks in London, and then 2.5 months in Paris, and then a month in Florence, Italy. It's like, oh my God, this is incredible. Is it SAG? Yes, and they're paying my rate. The whole thing, and it's favored nation, so I get the same per diem Matt Damon gets. It's like, is it a good role? And it's like, it's fantastic, but the best part, I don't even work the first week. So I guess my dream job would be, saying that runs for a long time, pays my rate, but has lots of time off.
Which is pretty funny. I mean,
because that's the actor's dream, right? Is to have a job, but not have to worry about doing anything. I don't know. Is there a dream? You know what I think is a dream job? Not for everybody, but Stephen Hill on Law and Order for 11, 27, how many seasons? 19. Midway through the episode, because he played the district attorney, and midway through the episode, Michael Moriarty or Sam Waterston would come in and say, well, we lost this witness and now we're stuck. And Stephen Hill would sort of look up from something at his desk and say, have you talked to the mother? And then, then they'd be, and the mother would be in a store, she'd be shopping, she'd be pushing a cart, she wouldn't stop to talk to them. And then after the conviction or the arrest and the court case, they'd end up in Stephen Hill's office, and somebody would say, well, it really wasn't who we thought it was. And Stephen Hill would say something like, you live and learn. He'd put on his hat and walk up through, and that would be the end of the episode. That seems like the perfect television job to me.
Just kind of roll in, roll out.
Yeah, it's maybe 2, maybe 3 days an episode, but it's not all day. It's just a couple of hours that can probably get you in after noon, but out by 3 or 4.
That's so funny. Oh my God. Oh, so great. Is there anything about acting that you feel like you still have to learn? Or is there anything that, do you feel like there's still something that you haven't quite gotten or don't quite understand yet that you're still kind of aiming for?
I know everything there is to know about.
Some people think they do.
Yeah, I mean every. See, here's the thing about acting. I'm going to tell you what it is right now. So juggling is, when you break it down, is just throwing a ball and then catching that ball or that club and then throwing it again. And then there's some complications of adding a second ball. This is throw, catch. And then there's, when you add a third, then it's like throw, catch. But it's still just throwing and catching. And the thing about the acting is that it's really that simple, but you really have to do it. And it's super easy to pretend you're doing it, and a little more complex, but still on the easy side of things, to make it appear that you're really throwing and catching without actually doing it. So to remind yourself to actually do the thing, and finding a way to actually do the thing when you're acting is the challenge, and it's different for every, not just part you play, but every scene and every line and every beat, And so that's the thing that's super engaging for me, is to really is to see how close you can get as you go along to genuinely doing the thing. And I don't mean like really, yes, you pull your punches. And if you have to leave and the door is locked, you don't break the set, but you find why the person you're playing, despite all appearances of their desperation to leave, why they can't bring themselves to do the thing that'll get them out of the room. That stuff, that's always infinitely interesting and engaging to me, and more.
When you're kind of working on a role, sort of digging your way through it, do you have any rituals that you do? Is there like a place in your house you have to be, or is there like a time of day?
Bleed the chicken of all of its blood.
You'd be surprised. Some people do.
Is there? No, there's not like a particular. There's.
I feel like some actors are like superstitious about things like that.
So I would say the only thing that I feel like that way about is I work on my lines. Like if I'm doing a play, I run my lines a couple of times a day till like the end of the run, and for a few days after, so that with the just to be absolutely certain that I never ever have to think about them. But that in terms of like this superstition thing, it's like I want to. I mean that's initially after my first years of studying, really wanted to make sure that I was stretched out and warmed up, and that's still important. That I've done at least some kind of vocal warm up, just so that my mouth is going to be useful to me and not an impediment. Because I was very involved with the project of wanting to do it the right way, and I'd like to shower, like make sure that I was showered and shaved the right way, and there was a certain amount of control that went into, like, before going to the theater or showing up on set, and it was really part of the work with Roy London of, like, well, can you subvert yourself a little bit and come as you are, and bring some of your day into what happens in the play or what happens in the scene that you're doing. And nobody has to know about it, but it might add some deeper, unexpected resonance to what you're doing.
Are you kind about watching yourself? Or?
Oh no, I hate it. I despise watching myself.
Is it because you're critical, like you look at all the flaws, or it's like you just can't?
I just can't, and I'm reviled by my image and the sound of my voice and the weakness of my choices and my lack of suitability as a performer, for a period of like 5 to 7.5 years. And then if I see something that is like more than 5 to 7.5 years old, I tend to go, oh wow, I'm so skinny. Look how much hair I had. I was not bad in that scene. But yeah, I find it really horrible. I do not understand. I mean, I kind of envy it, and I respect it as a tool, but because there are actors and certain things on set where you'll do a take of something, and then they'll want to watch their performance, and presumably, I think, to make to gauge what they're doing and adjust it. And every time I've been in that situation, they'll say, "We're going to watch playback." You want to come? And I was like, "Oh no, I'm good." And then when I start to realize, like, oh, that's the kind of culture that's on that show, then I'll finally go, all right, I'll watch the playback, and it's like, all I have to see is a couple seconds, and it's like, oh no, I shouldn't have looked at it. It's when you go online and you search some innocuous thing, but then you go, oh, this seems like this is going to take me to the information that I want, and it's like something horrible. You go, oh my god, I can't believe I saw that. That's how
Can you read reviews, theater reviews?
all the time.
Do you really?
Yeah, except
after when you're still in the run?
Yeah, but I swear that I don't, and I swear that I don't want to hear them from anybody, and I don't want to talk about them, and I want everybody to agree that nobody's going to mention them, good or bad, and then I'll, in previews, I'll like search for anybody like a blog post say anything, and then
that's so horrifying, but I get it.
And then if it's a good review, I'll go, well, it's not bad, but I don't think they really got what I was doing. And then if it's bad, I'll go, they're right. That's totally right.
The bad ones kind of sear into your mind.
The bad ones immediately validate my my worthlessness. And the good ones are like, yeah, but whoever's writing this, like, has no idea what they're talking about.
I guess my sort of last question, or last sort of topic is, was there ever a moment where you thought about quitting acting or giving up?
It's like a little after 3.
Oh, should we go?
So
Do you have to go?
I haven't actually. I didn't think about it more than 5 or 6 times during this while we've been sitting here talking. Yeah, I think I think about it all the time. Because it's, it's like doing origami for a living. It's super engaging, and if you work hard on it, you can make something that's beautiful or pleasing. That in a way you kind of know, like, well, really, if anybody could do this. And I love doing it. I do. Like, I love it so much. But I don't even understand. I have, since I started working, sort of been thinking, like, and this is all just like bad childhood indoctrination, and my brother and sister both had interests in art, and my mother did craft kind of stuff, but it wasn't an artistic environment that I was growing up in. And while there was an appreciation for art as a kind of seasoning to life, it wasn't an essential thing. But it's totally essential for me. But I still have this like other voice that's like, when are you going to figure out like something real to do? And I know it's, and I don't agree with it, but it is one of the like chorus of horrible things that are in my head.
Conversations with Actors is produced by me, Vivian Kerr. You can find out more about our guests at conversationswithactors.com. Please rate us in iTunes if you have a moment and hit subscribe. You can reach me at conversationswithactors@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments. Thank you very much for listening.